Her story began not in a cradle, but in a cloud of gray smoke. It was December 2007, and the Valley of Eldoret was a mirror that had shattered. Underneath a heavy wooden bed, a small girl named Kenaya held her breath, her eyes wide as she watched shadows dance across the walls. Beside her, a woman with locks wrapped in green and gold silk held a finger to her lips. This was Tatushan, her mother, the quiet spirit of how things should be. "Don't be afraid, little one," Tatushan whispered. "The fire is old, but your name is new. You are the one who will survive the heat." Before the paper house was built, the land belonged to the shadows of the old uncles. The most towering of them all was Uncle Daniela MWOI. He was a man of long limbs and a longer memory, standing in the doorways with an ivory-handled walking stick that he called his rungu. When he spoke, the floorboards seemed to stiffen. "I follow the footsteps of those before me," he would say, his voice like the low roll of thunder over the Tugan Hills. He had built schools and roads, but he also kept a basement where secrets were locked away and the air was thin. Kenaya watched him from the stairs, realizing that power could be a protective umbrella or a heavy weight. In 2010, the valley decided it was tired of living in the smoke. A man with silver-framed spectacles and a scholarly stride walked into the clearing. This was Konst, Kenaya's father, a man made of ink and ironclad logic. He and Tatushan sat at a large table under a fever tree, surrounded by thousands of scraps of paper brought by people from every corner of the land. They argued, they laughed, and they wrote until their fingers were stained black. "We are building a house that no shadow can knock down," Konst told Tatushan as they shook hands over the final draft. "A house where the words are the walls." On a bright Tuesday in August, the paper house was finally unveiled at Uhuru Park. It was a magnificent structure of 260 rooms, each one a right, each one a promise. Kenaya, now a growing girl, walked through the front door with her father. The walls were ivory-colored and covered in fine, breathing script. "Look here, Kenaya," Konst said, pointing to a grand hall labeled Article 1. "This is the foundation. It says the power doesn't belong to the house, or to the architects, or to the uncles. It belongs to you." Kenaya touched the wall and felt a strange, humming warmth beneath her fingertips. Life in the paper house was busy. Kenaya spent her days exploring the room of devolution, a vast space that opened into 47 smaller gardens. In these gardens, people didn't have to wait for the big city to tell them when to plant or how to build. She saw a woman in a bright kanga directing the construction of a new well, and a young man teaching children under a baobab tree. For the first time, the far corners of the valley felt like they were part of the home. "The house is growing," Kenaya whispered to herself, feeling the pride of a girl who finally saw her friends being fed. But the house had uninvited guests. In the middle of the night, Kenaya found a slight man with sharp, clever eyes named Goldie Berg raiding the kitchen. He was filling a clinking briefcase with compensation for gold that didn't exist. In another corner, a faceless shadow called Anglo-Lise was signing contracts for security equipment that would never arrive, leaving nothing but empty boxes and a massive bill. Kenaya watched from the shadows, her heart sinking. These men weren't breaking the walls. They were eating the foundation from the inside, turning the promises of the paper house into hollow echoes. Years passed, and a new uncle named Rudo took charge of the gate. He was a man of sudden, wide smiles and a story about selling chickens by the road. He brought with him a massive, growling beast in a rusted iron cage, the finance monster. He looks scary, Rudo said, his eyes twinkling as he fed the monster a handful of salt and bread. But he is here to pay our debts. We just need to give him a little more of your pocket money every day. The monster breathed out a cloud of tax fumes that made Kenaya cough. She looked at the cage and realized the monster was growing faster than the house. By 2024, the air in the valley was thick with the monster's breath. Kenaya's younger relatives, Uncle Geen and Auntie Zizi, didn't sit quietly in the parlor. They sat on the porch, their faces illuminated by the blue light of their phones. "The math doesn't add up, Kenaya," Zizi said, her thumbs flying across the screen. Geen nodded, his hoodie pulled up. "The paper house says we have a right to be heard, but the finance monster is eating our future before we even get to live it." At 3 a.m., the valley was dark, but 1,000 small screens began to glow like stars. On June 25th, the stars moved from the screens to the streets. Kenaya stood with Uncle Geen at the front of a great wave of people. They weren't carrying rungus, they were carrying flags and phones. When the security forces arrived with smoke and loud sounds, Kenaya felt the old fear from the elder at bed rising in her throat. But she looked at Geen, who stood his ground even as the tear gas swirled. "The ink doesn't bleed," he shouted over the noise. They were standing for the paper house, demanding that the walls protect the people, not just the guests in the kitchen. After the sun set on the protests, the valley was quiet again, but the silence was different. Kenaya sat in the grand hall of Article 1 with her mother, Taitushin. Her mother handed her a small, laminated card. On it was written, "All sovereign power belongs to the people." "The house is not the paper, Kenaya," Taitushin said softly. "The house is the courage it takes to read it aloud. You are 18 now. The blood of the past has become the ink of your future." Kenaya looked at the card, then at the valley, and finally knew that the paper house was finally, truly, her home.